My name is Daniel Raim. I'm the director of Fiddler's Journey to the Big Screen.
The phone rings. How would you like to be titled in the film Fiddler on the Roof? And I put it down and screamed like, ah!
Cut! All right, hold it there.
Arthur Krim looked at me and he says, "What would you say if we were to say, we want you to direct Fiddler on the Roof?" And then I said, "What would you say if I told you I'm a goy?" Taking a play and bringing it out into the real world, it's always a challenge for a director.
Bringing Fiddler to the big screen was certainly one of my great challenges. Jewison is one of the few directors who understood that. He had fantastic sense of rhythm musically.
John Williams managed to harness my singing and almost make the verse that I do with the shawl kind of ballad-like. Matchmaker, matchmaker, I'll bring the veil.
It's not just about a dairyman with 5 marriageable daughters. It's more than that. There's something else that gives these shows their power.
I found it was quite possible for me to identify with Tevye and to identify with the Jewish religion.
Over 1 billion people saw the film, so they couldn't all be Jewish.
Getting to know the actresses who played my sisters brought us close together, which gives you the sense of family.
The girls were my family. They were my sisters.
During the wedding scene, Ross was just following through an instinct to give me a hug.
Even in a musical comedy like Fiddler on the Roof, you still feel the pain. And I think that's, that's the heart of the thing.
We want a film for everybody.
And what is it about the fiddler and the fiddle that we can't let go of? It's the closest thing to a human voice that there is. That's a fiddle. That's worth the price of a ticket.
This is Factual America. We're brought to you by Alamo Pictures, an Austin and London-based production company making documentaries about America for international audiences. I'm your host, Matthew Sherwood. Each week, I watch a hit documentary and then talk with the filmmakers and their subjects. This week, it is my pleasure to welcome award-winning and Oscar-nominated filmmaker Daniel Raim, director of Fiddler's Journey to the Big Screen. The film captures a bygone era of early television and blockbuster Hollywood musicals. It also shines a light on the incredible career of fellow filmmaker Norman Jewison. Jewison had critical success over more than 3 decades, but his crowning achievement might be bringing Fiddler on the Roof to the big screen. Legendary film critic Pauline Kael called Fiddler the most powerful movie musical ever made. If you are a fan of the play or Hollywood of the 1960s and 70s, or even if you're not, stay tuned as we catch up with Daniel and learn more about the unlikely story behind this iconic American film. Daniel, welcome to Factual America. How are things with you?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's great to be with you on the program.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So for our listeners and viewers, the film we'll be talking about today is Fiddler's Journey to the Big Screen. It's come out this year. It's done the festival circuit. It's doing quite well. How can people see this film? Is it available yet? It's
currently in the United States and North America, United States and Canada. It's currently playing in theaters and festivals. And then it'll be in the UK, I believe, towards the end of the year, and playing in other countries around the world as well.
Yeah. Well, definitely look forward to that here. We're based in the UK, especially because I'd love to see this on a big screen. So thanks for that. I mean, it seems like it should be relatively obvious from the title, but what is Fiddler's Journey to the Big Screen all about? Can you give us a synopsis?
Yeah, it's about director Norman Jewison's quest to adapt this beloved Broadway stage musical, Fiddler on the Roof, into a widescreen epic. And it's about his creative journey, a spiritual and creative journey, making the film. And it also highlights the work of a lot of great behind the scenes cinema artists and actors and actresses as well. And they're kind of remembrances of working with Norman Jewison and making this film.
Yeah, I think, and maybe for our listeners, because it is, this has come out roughly in line with the 50th anniversary of the film. But maybe I'm aware of it because I'm of a certain age, but maybe some perspective on Fiddler on the Roof as a cultural phenomenon. I mean, because I think maybe there'll be some people who don't realize how huge this thing was. Yeah. Even the play as well as the film.
The film and the play. Well, in 1962 or 63, the lyricist Sheldon Harnick and his composer writing partner Jerry Bach and Broadway writer who writes librettos, Joseph Stein, the three of them got together with the intention of adapting a series of short stories by acclaimed Yiddish playwright and author Shalom Aleichem called Tevye the Milkman. And they were drawn to the stories of his relationship with his daughters and their desire to get, to start their own life. It's oftentimes against the wishes of the father. So it brought into play the tension between tradition and modernity. And they created this incredible musical that was directed and choreographed by the great Broadway director, choreographer Jerome Robbins. And so the four of them really came together and adapted and shaped this material into what was originally, thought to be very limited audience, for just Jewish, because it deals with Jewish life, Jewish shtetl, which is like a small market town in turn of the century Ukraine, which is now right outside of Kiev. And it exploded in 1964. It became a phenomenon on Broadway. And this is sort of the story of that time when United Artists sort of decided, hey, what can we adapt this into a big Hollywood musical?
And why do you think this story? I mean, why do you think that story resonated then, and I would say still resonates now? Because
I would say that it starts with the beauty of the original works, the original short stories by Shalom Aleichem were all so imaginative and rich in terms of what he was able to draw out of this kind of universal story about a Jewish milkman and his family. Yeah. And the genius of the creators of the original Broadway production, how they adapted it so beautifully into a musical, and the songs, like Sunrise, Sunset, and the themes of Anatevka and exile and having to be forced out of your homes, and all of these issues that are quite powerful and universal and timely still resonate today. And audiences all over the world embraced Fiddler on the Roof in Japan, all over the world, as their own story. So it was quite quite a powerful creation by the original Broadway creators.
I'll add one to a personal story. I was in the marching band in high school, and my freshman year, the show we put together was all songs from Fiddler on the Roof. Probably helped that we had both band directors were Jewish.
Marching band, I can hear it now.
Yeah, exactly. You can hear. It started off with tradition, and then it went from there. So not. But anyway, it permeated the culture. It's probably still does, but certainly back. So that was in the 80s, that's, it was still there. It's the songs are so memorable. And, yet, like I think you've mentioned in the film, it revives a lost world of Eastern European Jewry. It's a religious movie in many ways, or a spiritual movie. And yet, Doesn't sound like a big budget blockbuster when you start listing kind of what it's about or who the intended audience is. And why do you think we already asked you how it does resonate, and you talk is indeed the original stories, but was a lot of this down to Norman Jewison and the crew that he put together, this amazing crew that he put together to adapt this?
Together, the casting, absolutely. I mean, he was the great conductor of this and had a vision, a very clear vision, and he was at the top of his game as a visual storyteller.
Yeah.
And what he brought with, what he brought in terms of a vision, and surrounded himself with incredible collaborators.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about Norman Jewison, because the thing is, I've recognized the name, but he's not one of these household names necessarily.
Right.
But then you start looking at the list of his filmography, and it's amazing, the stuff that he did and he was involved with, and nominated 3 times for Best Director. So maybe give us a little introduction to Norman Jewison.
Yeah, he's maybe he's most well known for both In the Heat of the Night, which won Best Picture in 1967, and Moonstruck, which I don't remember exactly what accolades that won, but of course Cher maybe won an Academy Award for that. But I mean, he, and in a way, Fiddler on the Roof is sort of following In the Heat of the Night. His Norman Jewison was also a filmmaker who was interested in telling stories that relate to social and political concerns he had. And I think what he brought a lot of feeling for the issues of the pogroms and the Holocaust and all the issues that the Jewish people experienced at that time.
Okay, so one thing that strikes me, in having watched this lovely film that you've made, is that it's insights into the art of filmmaking, and specifically on how Norman Jewison did it. But I mean, it is, and also I don't imagine filmmaking's done like, well, we know filmmaking's not done exactly this way anymore. It's a bygone era in some ways, but in other ways, these are universal elements, obviously, to what he did as a filmmaker, and it's an homage to him in many ways. And and I guess I don't even know where to begin with all the amazing elements to this. As we're talking about the team that he assembled, but maybe we can start with the music, because I think that's probably what most people think of when they first think of Fiddler on the Roof. I mean, as you mentioned, Bach and Harnack and the Stein. So he had this amazing music to work with already, but then a relatively young, unknown John Williams of Star Wars fame and many others gets involved, and that was an amazing collaboration.
Even before Star Wars fame, so this is 1971, and I think this might have been his second film that he worked on, or third, but he was eager to be part of this project with Norman, and was there from the beginning. They went on research trips to Israel and went to archives and listened to Yiddish music, and really dug deep into the cultural fabric of Jewish life and music. And John Williams was, I think this was his first Academy Award win, maybe even nomination, and he won the best Academy Award for musical score. Not only did he adapt the music for the big screen, but he composed an extraordinary introduction piece called cadenza, which is a 7-minute piece for the opening credits, where we see a Fiddler on the Roof with the titles. and this incredible performance by the maestro violinist Isaac Stern.
Yeah, yeah, and I think what was interesting because you've got interviews with Williams, and he talks about Jewison's natural musicality, which was interesting. I never think about that.
Norman, so Norman, who had a background in musical theater, Norman Jewison, his start in terms of as a director was directing live musical television. And famously, Norman Jewison directed Harry Belafonte, Tonight with Harry Belafonte, and the Judy Garland Show.
Right.
I learned from speaking with John Williams that even at that time, John Williams sensed that Norman understood where to place the camera and how to move the camera in regards to how the music is flowing, and Norman, I think, was, but his aunt gave him piano lessons, and so he had a musical background, which clearly powerfully informed the making of both, might I say, Fiddler on the Roof and his follow-up film, Jesus Christ Superstar.
Exactly. And then, I mean, probably maybe what flows from that as well is, and again, it's not something I had thought about, was how to incorporate this, and as you said, how he's able to has this musicality and knows how to film this. The importance of set design on all of this, and John Williams mentions that. I mean, knowing exactly how many steps you need from this point to that point, and how you build a set around that is,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm as a documentary filmmaker, I've been curious to learn to investigate and talk with cinema artists in terms of the collaborative. It's such a collaborative medium.
Yeah.
So the only one person for filmmaking, for Fiddler's Journey to the Big Screen that we couldn't get is the choreographer. But it was great to have John Williams comment on production designer Robert Boyle's set of the barn, and as you mentioned, how many steps of the ladder Topol has to climb up, and do we need to remove one step of the ladder so he gets up on that beat for If I Were a Rich Man? And how do you create a musical number? I mean, starting from scratch, starting from adapting the vocals of that singer to the playback and everything that goes with it.
Yeah, and then as he decided, as Norman had decided that he wasn't, you were going to be. It was like an actual film. It wasn't just like they're kind of on stage and you're watching them. You like you would in a theater. This is actually you're there in amongst them.
You certainly are. Yeah.
And then in what you're saying, and I know I think you've done a short on Robert Boyle, and I think what he was able to do. I didn't have an appreciation for this, but recreating shtetl life. But I've had some experience with Eastern Europe, and I know about wooden Eastern European architecture. But to then find this village in now the former Yugoslavia, but that existed, and finding craftsmen that could to build this attention to detail, to build a synagogue from scratch, because they don't exist. Unfortunately, didn't exist anymore anywhere.
Right. Specifically, wooden synagogues that are painted with symbolism, and Hebrew letters, and so according to they had this big research project where they traveled through Eastern Europe, and there were no synagogues survived after World War II, after the Holocaust. But they were able to piece together through archival photographs what it might have looked like, and recreated an actual structure in Lekenek, Yugoslavia, using, as you noted, the real wood of that area.
Yeah, and it's this. And then I guess the next, and then you add this cinematography with all this, and the great Ozzie Morris was the cinematographer, I mean, did he literally film all those scenes through silk stockings? As we find out,
Certainly a majority of the film looks to me as if it was actually shot through a silk stocking. Yeah. And there are certain scenes where they're panning, where the sun is reflecting into the lens. You can actually see the texture of the silk stockings more so. And so certainly that was the case.
I mean, it would be CGI now, but I think it's, but just literally, like, because you've got Norman Jewison saying, they literally waiting for the sunset, for that wedding scene and putting all that together and the candles and stuff and just what they had to, filming this in 1970 or so, how they had what they had to do to bring that to life in the way they did is remarkable.
That's the wedding procession scene. Norman had referred to it as one of the most beautiful shots in all of his oeuvre, in his body of work. And to your point, they did wait for the sun, the magic hour for sunset. Sunrise, sunset, is the theme, the song that they sing under the huppah, under the canopy at the wedding. But the procession going up to where the wedding took place, and everyone's holding candles, and it's great to see. Not only, one of the great discoveries in making this doc was as I was interviewing Michelle Marsh, who plays Hoda, one of the daughters. Went up to her home. This is in basically 1 year ago this month in May 2021. We were asked to enter her house with our gear through the garage, and in her garage was this box, and it said Fiddler on the Roof. And I said, Michelle, what's in this box? She said, oh, that's my evacuation box, because here in California we're dealing with fires. And so I said, well, great, can we please bring your evacuation box into the interview and go go through the materials. And in that box was a series of Polaroids that we see in the documentary. Never before seen that she took, her friends took, of the behind the scenes of the making of that proscenium, that the procession to the wedding, and other gems. So that was like a documentary filmmaker's dream.
If you could all just walk through someone's garage and find the magic box, if you will.
Highly recommend it. Yes.
Exactly. I think actually we're going to give our listeners an early break here, but we'll be right back with Daniel Raim, the director of Fiddler's Journey to the Big Screen at festivals and in theaters in the U.S. and coming to the U.K. and rest of the world, hopefully by the end of this year. If you enjoy Factual America, check out the Movie Maker podcast. That's all one word, Movie Maker, where our friends at moviemaker.com interview everyone from filmmakers just breaking in to A-listers like David Fincher and Edgar Wright about their movie-making secrets and behind-the-scenes tricks of the trade. They go deep and let the guests speak uninterrupted to get you the most film insight. Now back to Factual America. Welcome back to Factual America. I'm here with acclaimed filmmaker Daniel Raim, director of Fiddler's Journey to the Big Screen. It's out now in theaters. You might see it at a film festival, and as well, it will be coming out here in the UK later this year, and I'm sure there's a rest of the world wider release planned as well. We were talking about this, so we're talking about Norman Jewison and this incredible crew that he assembled to bring Fiddler on the Roof to life. And the one thing, I guess you've mentioned it, but we haven't discussed necessarily in more detail, is also the incredible cast he has assembled, and I guess led by Topol. But was Jewison? I mean, is Jewison? Would he be considered an actor's director? Is that because it seems like everyone has certainly does. No one has anything unkind to say, that's for sure.
On the contrary, I think that's part of his genius and his brilliance, is making actors feeling incredibly comfortable and secure and working in this case with non-actors, first time in front of a camera. Mainly the three actresses who played Tevye, the milkman's eldest daughters, Topol's eldest daughters. And even Topol, this was his first big production, he had acted before. Now, what's interesting, Topol's 32 years old when he's playing Tevye the milkman, but he looks like he could be, an elderly father in his 50s or whatever, with the beard and the gray beard, and they would have to trim some of the gray hairs from Jewison's beard to apply to Topol's beard. But yeah.
Oh, God. Well, yeah, I know that's and I noticed he's I think Topol's still alive, isn't he? I mean, he's so it's quite amazing. Yeah, I didn't realize how young he was at the time, but and I think the movie does a great job of also explaining how, obviously the great Zero Mostel was played Tevye on Broadway, but find how Jewison, I think that's the other thing, how Jewison had his vision. He wasn't beholden to the vision that people might have had of this is how it's done on Broadway, so this is how it's going to be brought to the big screen. He had a different vision and had an understanding of what would work on the screen, didn't he?
I mean, it's absolutely two different mediums, right?
Yeah.
So there's one medium, theater, Broadway, where an actor of Zero Mostel's larger than life can gesturing can communicate to the last row in the theater.
Yeah.
Whereas he needed an actor that Jewison wanted, first of all, to kind of re-envision the look and feel and tone of Fiddler on the Roof and set it in a real Jewish shtetl, basically. And that's why they spent so many months searching for the right location in Eastern Europe, finally settling in former Yugoslavia. And, looking at his body of work, right? Or his early comedies for Universal with Doris Day, and then the Russians are coming. The Russians are coming with Alan Arkin, right? What an incredible performance! As a Russian submarine captain, right?
Yeah.
So full of humor and warmth. He's kind of, and then and then making In the Heat of the Night with Sidney Poitier. I mean, what a performance, right? And following that, the Thomas Crown Affair, and how he could negotiate with the great actor,
Steve McQueen,
Steve McQueen, and figure out, how to get the best out of the juice, as he was known at that time, and really bring him into, it's such a great character study, the Thomas Crown Affair.
Yeah.
And then he did Gaily, and then Fiddler on the Roof. And so by the time he did Fiddler on the Roof, I think he had already been established as a great actor's director.
Well, you just described. Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, you described one hell of a run, just even in that 5 to whatever year period it is. Absolutely amazing.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you look at the quality of the performances, also go all the way into the 1980s into Moonstruck, right? Or Hurricane with Denzel Washington. The way he's able to elicit very meaningful, humanistic performances, I think it's kind of extraordinary.
Yeah. And what about your film? I mean, how did this project come about?
Well, there's several sort of. First, I think the big thing is that when I was a student at the American Film Institute in 1997, my professor was Fiddler on the Roof production designer Robert Boyle, who appears in the documentary.
Right.
And I was captivated by his. What was interesting about learning from Robert Boyle was that any great cinema artist, whether you're an editor, production designer, cinematographer, you're a storyteller. And the way he kind of taught us about what does it mean to be a cinema artist, a visual storyteller. And it's not just about building walls and creating sets. It's really about character and story. So I learned so much from him. And he was also the production designer, Alfred Hitchcock's chief production designer. going back to Salvatore, Shadow of a Doubt, North by Northwest, The Birds, and Marnie. And I decided he would make a great subject for a documentary. And it was my first film after film school. It was a short subject about Robert Boyle called The Man on Lincoln's Nose, which is the working title of North by Northwest. It's a reference to his work on that. And that's where I met Norman Jewison making that film. And I interviewed both Norman in 2000 and Robert Boyle. And a part of that documentary investigates their collaboration making Fiddler on the Roof. So I was already thinking about these two cinema artists and totally excited, because the thing is, for me, on a personal level, when I was 13, my grandparents who had survived the Holocaust showed me Fiddler on the Roof. I didn't know the music. I had never seen the play. They popped it on their TV. They had a double VHS cassette. And I was totally transported, and like so many, might I say, millions of people who learn about Jewish culture and Jewish history through Fiddler on the Roof, I was completely captivated by the music, the story, but also the detail of the production design and the, I wasn't thinking, production design. I was thinking about, it's like that was Norman Jewison's intention, is to bring us into this shtetl, into this, so we feel the mud, toiling of the earth, and we feel that the Jewish cultural, the beauty and the pain as beautifully presented in the film. And while I'm watching this film, to the left of the TV is a portrait of my great grandparents who died in the Holocaust. And for me, all that churning together, my own interest in cinema and Jewish history, and Norman Jewison specifically, led me to make this film.
Okay. But yet still sort of 20 years in the making, kind of, to get, well, but it's filmmaking.
Because there's so much
stuff
to say about Fiddler on the Roof. I mean, you can make so many, in the time that I'm doing interviews in 2009, I finally saw Fiddler on the Roof performed live. It was the Topol farewell tour in Los Angeles. And that's when I first thought, let's do a feature film. Because what happened was I knew the music at that point. I knew Topol, but it was so interesting to see the theater version, which was Jerome Robbins' vision as opposed to Norman Jewison's vision. But what was also striking for me was that the audience was made up of a very diverse ethnic background. I mean, it was like a kind of incredible to see that this story, which I thought was so specific to Jewish life and Jewish history, reaches the hearts and souls of millions of people who are not Jewish. And it's not even about that for them. It's
exactly.
That's the genius, I think, of both Shalom Aleichem stories and Norman Jewison, all the way through Norman's film.
I mean, what is to be honest, I have not seen the theater production. What is the big difference in the visions between the two?
I would say the big difference is that in the process of designing the world of the Broadway production, Jerome Robbins gravitated towards a painting by Marc Chagall, that depicted in a very surrealist way Fiddler hovering above a roof. And his set designer, Boris Aronson, designed the stage production to emulate that Chagall-esque surrealistic vision of a shtetl in a town, and that worked beautifully. But Jewison, this is 1971, and New Hollywood was gravitating towards kind of a gritty realism, So Jewison brought his movie into this kind of realistic, and he didn't completely ditch the Chagall aesthetic, but he certainly, from the visual design, the visual structure of Jewison's film, it's realism as opposed to surrealism. But one could say that Jewison brought the spirit of Chagall into the film in other ways, and bought a watercolor of a Chagall, an original Chagall lithograph, maybe not a watercolor.
Yeah.
Brought it to the recording studio when Isaac Stern and John Williams recorded the cadenza and the score. And I would say that one of my favorite stories that Norman Jewison tells is that he brought the painting, and Isaac Stern says, he was about to start the recording, and Isaac Stern says, we have Chagall here, we have the fiddler. And then Isaac Stern says, Chagall's uncle used to climb up on the roof and get drunk and play the fiddle. And I'm going to play a quarter tone flat.
Yeah.
And we have the spirit of Chagall here. So I would say that's the difference between the two things. And fundamentally too, we should say that the casting of Topol is antithetical.
Yeah.
It's a whole other physicality that Topol brought, and Zero Mostel versus Topol, it would have been a very different movie.
Yeah. Well, yeah, indeed. So you had this, you obviously had this relationship with Robert Boyle and Norman Jewison, but when you go to make this film, I mean, did you know you had this this incredible archive footage, access to this? Because it's amazing. I'm talking about the filming on the set. I mean, I don't imagine that was all that common back then.
I don't think it was all that common. And in 1970, when they were making Fiddler on the Roof, the National Film Board of Canada sent a crew with 16 millimeter cameras to film Norman Jewison, who's a Canadian treasure, right? Born in Toronto, to follow him directing both on location in former Yugoslavia, Lekenek and Zagreb, and as well in the Pinewood Studios in London, where they shot a lot of the interiors. And we were very fortunate to work with the National Film Board of Canada and to scan the camera masters, 16 millimeter camera masters into 2K files to really show Norman at work as well as his collaborators. It was, I think, really important element to making this film.
Yes, and I imagine fans of even if you're not a fan or don't know the film that well, but fans of the film, certainly it's quite a treat to see how this was done.
Especially the bottle dance sequence.
Yes.
It's so memorable, but to see the camera operator and the focus puller dancing with them and Norman just orchestrating it. It's just so beautiful, and you get to see him working with the actors and kind of really conducting in the physical, what it means to be a director. He's not a quiet director. He doesn't sit kind of behind. He's not an observer. He's very physical, and he's with the actors, and he's eliciting a performance.
Well, he's almost literally shouting in Topol's face at one point in one scene. It's like all in good fun, good natured. But what he's trying to achieve, he is very hands on, and it was very interesting.
In that moment, he's actually in character.
Yeah,
as another, and he's in character and showing the level of intensity and energy that he. Yeah. And one of the actresses, Neva Small, says he could also play a 16-year-old girl.
Yeah. And then it strikes me that involvement with Fiddler on the Roof seems to ensure a long life. So you've still got so many of these people who are still with us remarkably.
Incredible.
Norman Jewison's still around. We got John Williams. You had recent interviews with him. We've got Sheldon Harnick, who's still going strong. Amazing. That must have been obviously you still got the three actresses who played the sisters. That must have been such a blessing to be able to, even as you say, some of these interviews only occurred in the last year or so. To still have access to these people.
Yeah. No, like John Williams is 90 years old, and his ability to recall names and remember certain details is exceptional. Better than me. So, and Norman Jewison, I think that's something that I appreciate that documentaries can do, is kind of you have this sort of collective vision of memory, this kind of collective memory, right? And I think memory and I don't mean just your ability to remember, but just that the theme of memory, and clearly what comes through for me in terms of the movie and doing the interviews is that there's a very special place in the heart of all these artists that worked on the movie, even 50 years later. Even John Williams, who went on to have the most extraordinary career in movies, has a profoundly special place in his, special place in his heart for Fiddler.
And that's an interesting point, because I think if you ask people what did John Williams do, very few people probably even realize, even fans of the film, that he's the man behind the music, at least for the film.
Incredible. Yeah.
Hey, I think we're starting to come up on our time together, starting to come to close, Daniel. But I just had a few more questions. I know from your filmography, you've done a lot of, well, it's varied, but you've done a lot of shorts. Is that short docs? Is that you have a preference for shorts, or is that just kind of the subject matter has kind of led you in that direction?
Well, my first documentary about Robert Boyle was a short subject. It was 40 minutes. That was actually the only short I made independently, and was very blessed that it went on to become Oscar nominated. That doc, The Man on Lincoln's Nose, which, by the way, I plan to include in the Blu-ray of Fiddler's Journey to the Big Screen, because in a way it's coming full circle. But I have done a number of documentary short subjects that you might be referring to for the Criterion Collection.
I see.
Which is a distributor of Blu-rays. They create these amazing packaged discs of great auteurs, and it's been quite an adventure, and a great adventure to sort of investigate with Criterion the work of some of these great masters.
Well, I spotted that, for instance, you had something on there about Andrei Rublev. I love that film, and that sounds like something I would definitely am going to have to check out. So there is this sort of, what I find interesting, in just this the only film of yours I've had the privilege of watching thus far, but these subjects who are kind of unknown behind the camera, but who are so key and important to the Hollywood that we've grown to love, and how certainly throughout the not just Robert Boyle but others that you've done. Is that something that's just kind of evolved? Is it kind of organically, or it's obviously you have an interest, but
the one that comes to mind is in 2015 I made a documentary called Harold and Lillian, a Hollywood love story. It premiered at the Cannes Film Festival and screened all over the world in theaters and Netflix. And it's really this story about this unsung heroes of Hollywood, this couple. Harold Michelson was a storyboard artist, worked with Hitchcock and DeMille and Kubrick. His wife Lillian was a film researcher. Rarely do you ever see their names on screens. But Harold Michelson, who also worked with Robert Boyle on Fiddler on the Roof, as a storyboard artist, would be assigned a movie like The Graduate, and he was, according to Lillian, a leg man. And you meet these incredible artists, and you talk with them, and you find out that he's the one who conceived of this very iconic leg shot from The Graduate. With
my goodness!
Framed through Dustin, Dustin Hoffman framed against Anne Bancroft's leg. And that's the work and contributions of these incredible cinema artists. And in the case of Fiddler's Journey, we hear about Ozzie Morris, and who's the cinematographer in his journey. And I think it's so important to humanize Hollywood, to humanize these, and not just Hollywood, but world cinema, and to humanize and pay tribute to the incredible cinema artists that are working and doing work as relevant and as important as the director or anybody else on the set.
And so what's next for you after Fiddler?
I do have, so next year, 2023, is the 120th anniversary of the birth of the great Japanese director Yasujiro Ozu. And I will be making a feature documentary about Ozu and in partnership with Shochiku and the studio that made his movies, including Tokyo Story and Good Morning and Late Spring. That'll be a treat. And I, like Fiddler's Journey, my plan is to interview cast and crew members that worked with Ozu and also tell the story of his life and art through his own words.
Okay, well, definitely looking forward to that. And so imagine that's in production now, is it?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Well, good luck with that. And just want to say thank you. Thank you for coming to Factual America. It's been a real pleasure talking with you, Daniel. And would love to have you back on sometime. So thank you again for making this lovely film, Fiddler's Journey to the Big Screen, in theaters in the U.S. now, coming to the U.K. and rest of the world later this year. So again, thank you to Daniel Raim for your time today. We really very much appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Oh, well, thank you. I'd like to give a shout out to Sam and Joe Graves at Intersound Audio in Eskrick, England, in deepest, darkest Yorkshire. A big thanks to Nevin Apaunovich, podcast manager at Alamo Pictures, who ensures we continue getting great guests onto the show. And finally, a big thanks to our listeners. As always, we love to hear from you, so please keep sending us feedback and episode ideas. You can reach out to us on YouTube, social media, or directly by going to our website, www.factualamerica.com, and clicking on the Get in Touch link. And as always, please remember to like us and share us with your friends and family, wherever you happen to listen or watch podcasts. This is Factual America, signing off. You've been listening to Factual America. This podcast is produced by Alamo Pictures, specializing in documentaries, television, and shorts about the USA for international audiences. Head on down to the show notes for more information about today's episode, our guests, and the team behind the podcast. Subscribe to our mailing list or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Alamo Pictures. Be the first to hear about new productions, festivals showing our films, and to connect with our team. Our homepage is alamopictures.co.uk.